Hello everyone and welcome back into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. And to conclude today's show and the week here at the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, we go across the pond to Germany, to the Bundesliga, with a nice mouth-watering top 5 clash between two heavyweights in Germany. RB Leipzig taking on Bayer Leverkusen, and this should be a good one. Bayer Leverkusen, obviously, if you're not familiar with them, truly the kings of last year, going on an unbeaten run through the Bundesliga, winning their first ever Meisterschale. Came up a bit short in the Europa League. I like to say that as a Bayern Munich fan, that they weren't completely perfect. They were a little bit blemished, but ultimately, tremendous season under Xabi Alonso last year. This year, running Bayern Munich a little bit close here at the midway point, the Hinrunde, as they call it in the Bundesliga, in terms of how far back they are. Should they win this weekend and Bayern Munich were to lose to Freiburg, which I don't necessarily think will happen, hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers after that poor performance against Feyenoord, they will be within 1 point, and they will continue their, I believe, 8-match unbeaten streak if they do so. But RB Leipzig, here's the story of them. Match day 1, way back in match day 1, I believe, they were the team to ultimately beat Bayer Leverkusen for the first time in an entire season before anyone else. They were the ones to end the streak in the Bundesliga at the very least. They ran out 3-2 winners, 2 goals for Lois Opanda, who could be a big X factor in this game for them. But ultimately proving that even though this is kind of a down year for them, a lot of people believing that Leipzig could be title challengers themselves, that they still could be in the reckoning to really duke it out for their top 4 spot. Obviously not doing well in the Champions League this year, but to get back into the Champions League should be their priority. As for Bayer Leverkusen, they kind of did have a tougher start to the year than a lot of people expected, but now are looking like the informed team in the Bundesliga, winning all 5 of their last games. Believe they're now on a 7-game unbeaten run, undefeated run. Nevertheless, yes, I believe they lost in the Champions League, but in the Bundesliga at the very least, looking like true title challengers if Bayern were to slow down their pace. So this game going to be big for both teams in terms of their ambitions this season. Let's discuss the trajectories of both of these teams, the impact a win or loss could have on both of them, and ultimately the key players in this one. Let's start off with the storylines of this game. Let's talk about RB Leipzig for a little bit, because a lot of people might be a little bit more familiar with Leverkusen, but RB Leipzig were a team coming into this year that had a lot of good news surrounding it. A guy like Xavi Simons deciding to stay rather than not necessarily see out his loan from PSG. Bayern Munich was interested in him. For him to stay was a really nice decision that went RB Leipzig's way. They added Benjamin Sesko from Salzburg, Lois Opanda as well, I believe, from Club Brugge, really building up their attack. Have a decent defense as well. Willy Orban, Lucharl Gertruda, and of course their vaunted goalie Peter Golaschi still remains there. But I think this season did not go as expected, because a lot of these guys initially either didn't coalesce with each other or ultimately had kind of dried up in terms of scoring goals, because a lot of them are capable of scoring goals. Sesko, Opanda, notwithstanding, especially Simons, bring that creativity in the midfield. But their goals have really dried up this season, and they really haven't had any sort of cohesiveness in their attack for a prolonged period of time. They have been in a rough patch of form, especially in the Champions League, even though they got their first win there. It might not even matter as they go into the final week of league games in the Champions League next week. But ultimately, in the Bundesliga, they still have a chance. They have not been in fantastic form. They've lost 2 of their past 5, drawn 1, only won 2, like I said. But I feel like if on their day this attack is in rhythm and Xavi Simons is pulling the strings in the midfield as their creative engine, then they might be able to pull it off yet again against Bayer Leverkusen. But it's going to be a tough task because obviously Leverkusen is an elite team. Let's talk about them. Maintaining a lot of their own roster over the year, maintaining their manager in Xabi Alonso, deciding to stay for at least one more year, but most importantly, the retention of Florian Wirtz standing out as well as a lot of different clubs. Bayern Munich, I believe, leading the pack, Real Madrid, Barcelona, wanting his signature over last summer, but deciding to stay, could leave at the end of this year, maybe in 2026. We talked about Bayern's plans with him, but for now, remaining the apple of the eye of Bayer Leverkusen fans. But as well as him, you still have guys like Frimpong, you still have guys like Alejandro Grimaldo, who really define this system as the wingbacks pushing up high. And then guys like Patrick Schick, who's stepping in very nicely for Victor Boniface. And when Victor Boniface is healthy, those two guys up top, even though Patrick Schick seems like he was over the hump in a good run of form these past couple of weeks in replacement of Victor Boniface, but Victor Boniface as well ultimately being more of a powerful striker, more of a target man as well. But I really think that a lot of these guys staying proves that Bayer Leverkusen want this run to linger a little bit longer. And in order to do so, they need to continue stockpiling wins. Bayern Munich have had rough patches, but they haven't really been losing that much within them. Yes, you could say more about their Champions League status and that department as well, but ultimately in the Bundesliga, they haven't really hit a run of form where they've ultimately slowed down their title push. So Bayer Leverkusen just needs to win to stay alive here, and they've been doing just that, and they just have to hope now that Bayern Munich slips up yet again to one of these teams in the running for them to have a chance. But ultimately, the reason why I think RB Leipzig can pull up the upset is because of the fact that a lot of the noise surrounding all of their players and where they could be going or who could be leaving, who could be coming in potentially, is slowly quieting down. Benjamin Sesko, I believe, said that he was not in contact with any other clubs. I know Arsenal and Liverpool, I believe, are heavily linked with him, not just in this window, but the summer window as well. But ultimately, a lot of people saying he's content to stay at the club. Obviously, the whole Xavi Simons saga is dying down, and Lois Opanda settled in very nicely. So ultimately, the fact that their three biggest players are now devoid of any noise from the outside, noise from the media concerning their status with the team, now they can just focus on playing the football that a lot of people expected them to. And so I don't necessarily think this is going to be a team that goes quietly against the juggernaut that is Bayer Leverkusen. I feel that RB Leipzig are set up for a solid finish to the season, and I feel like a lot of the players that had rumors surrounding them will perform better as well. And then obviously this backline is still very potent, even though they've shipped the most goals of the top five and scored the fewest. I think that once this backline gets going, once combined with the goals they can score, that gets going as well, and this team is going to be a very cohesive unit. And so I don't necessarily think that Bayer Leverkusen should take this game very lightly, because I think that RB Leipzig are going to be a talented team, unlike they've been throughout the season on the pitch Saturday, that potentially Bayer Leverkusen could not account for. And so that's why, in terms of predictions, I would take RB Leipzig here. But in terms of how this impacts Bayer Leverkusen, win or lose, I don't necessarily think that Bayer Leverkusen should fret over a loss if they do end up losing here. Because the reason being, you're not necessarily looking for another Meisterschale. if you're Bayer Leverkusen. I feel like you're looking for one more season of stability before it gets chaotic. And I feel like maintaining this pace is slowly going to kill you towards the end of the season. So if Bayer Leverkusen starts to hit a rough patch of form, I wouldn't be too worried if you're a Leverkusen fan, because it settles the storm that's coming up in the summer when a lot of guys could be leaving after this year. So if Bayer Leverkusen loses this, it's no sweat off their back. I feel like potentially it might need a loss, funnily enough, to relax them from thinking about the future. Because we all think of them as this juggernaut, but at the end of the day, this is a mortal football squad. This is a squad that, yes, has a lot of talent, maybe even more talent than Bayern Munich, if you really want to dig that deep. But ultimately, the reason why I think that Leverkusen wouldn't necessarily be completely distraught or frustrated with a loss is because they need to learn to be mortal again. Because chances are this success is not going to be sustained for years to come. Bayern's going to get better. Leipzig's and Frankfurt's of the world are going to get better. Potentially Borussia Dortmund will get better over the next couple of seasons once they find their new manager. But right now, Bayer Leverkusen are going too fast to slow down. They might need to slow down to realize what's coming. And so that's why I feel like, win or lose, Bayer Leverkusen should be content. Because even though this is an important game for both teams, and Bayer Leverkusen wants to run Bayern close here, and Leipzig wants to compete for top 4, RB Leipzig is the team going to be a little bit more motivated, just because of the fact they're more so fighting for their lives, whereas Bayer Leverkusen are fighting to prolong this moment. So that's what makes the difference for me in this game. So let me know what you think about this game in the comments. If you are a Bundesliga fan, RB Leipzig or Bayer Leverkusen fan, because that will just about do it for today's show. This has been the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. I've been your host, Christopher Shepard. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next week, as always, at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Like, follow, and subscribe. Continue making yourselves available to the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube. But other than that, I'm out for today. See you all Monday.